Well, how about Kirk Cousins? I have been on this dude for years. I mean, literally years. I don't know how long. I can talk a player up. I've been talking this guy up since the minute he became a starting quarterback in the league in like 2015. Kirk Cousins just did that. Yeah, he did. Let's talk about Monday Night Football, man. Everyone's talking about the Eagles, and I understand why. Because they are the bigger fan base. They're the team that had bigger expectations. They're the team that was in a Super Bowl 2 years ago, and Jalen Hurts and Nick Sirianni, Saquon. They got the big names, and Jason Kelsey doing four media commercials. I've never seen more commercials with Jason Kelsey. He's got the Cinnamon Toast Crunch. He's got the Buffalo Wild Wings. He's got the NFL on ESPN. I mean, he's doing commercials left and right. He's not on the Eagles anymore, though. He's retired. And without Jason Kelsey, the Eagles kind of falling apart a little bit. I want to talk about the Falcons. Give Atlanta some flowers. Kirk Cousins struggled early once again, but really came alive in the second half. And this is what we've seen now with both Rodgers and with Kirk Cousins. Rusty start to the season, maybe because they're coming off ACL surgery. And then they both, in the third and fourth quarter, so it took them about 3 halves of football to get there, but they both, in the second half of week 2, looked so much better than they did in week 1. And we're seeing that improvement. We're starting to see some chemistry with Darnell Mooney. We're starting to see some chemistry with Drake London, who got the last touchdown. The Falcons look good. And we're going to talk more about this tomorrow, but the NFC South, that's a real division all of a sudden, which it hasn't been for the past 2 years. It really hasn't been. It's a lot of veteran quarterbacks. It's funny. All the quarterbacks are on at least their second team. Kirk's on his third team. Dalton's on his fifth team, I believe. Derek Carr on his second team, and Baker on his fourth team. So they're all kind of second chance reclamation projects. Not that Kirk needs reclamation, but it's a second. It's another opportunity. It's a new opportunity for him. And the AFC and the NFC South is real football now. The past 2 seasons, it's been unwatchable. I mean, Baker Mayfield and Tom Brady both kind of skated to a win with Tampa Bay at like 8 wins, and Baker won a playoff game last year. But for the most part, the NFC South has been unwatchable since his second to last season. And if you remember, his second to last season, he blew everybody out. So really, since the first year that Brady got there, which was also the last year that Breeze was there, so it was 2020, it's been unwatchable since 2020. For the past 3 seasons, all of a sudden, the NFC South is a real division. But let's talk about the Eagles very quickly. Look, Saquon's got to catch the ball. Everyone's quick to judge on Nick Sirianni. It's a simple mistake, a very simple mistake. I wouldn't have thrown. I would have ran the ball because if they didn't have any timeouts left. So the decision to throw the ball felt dumb at the time. But along with most other people, I think, at the time I was thinking, even if they don't score here, there's no way the Falcons drive down the length of the field. Because I thought Philadelphia's defense, for the most part, held strong for the most of that game. They fell apart in the end. But I had just seen C.J. Gardner-Johnson make that crazy stop. And, they were celebratory. They were great. They were rolling. They were moving the ball with efficiency down the field. I didn't think the Falcons had it in them to score there. So I thought, even if they did throw the ball, I thought, if the Falcons somehow got a 4th down stop, or if they kicked a field goal or whatever, I still didn't think the Falcons would score. In fact, when the Falcons got the ball down 6, I didn't think they'd score. It wasn't until that second throw to Darnell Mooney once they got into enemy territory, and then I realized, oh, holy smokes, they're gonna do this thing. So I didn't have a huge problem with the play call, although I do think if I was the coach, I would have ran the ball, because again, it goes very simply. The logic is, A, the run game has been working for us all night, and they literally couldn't stop Saquon Barkley. I mean, they could not stop him. B, though, the logic goes, even if we miss it, and it's 3rd and 3, so, Saquon's been an easy 4 to 5 yards every time he touches the ball, so he should get the 3rd and 3. Even if he doesn't, though, that takes 45 seconds off the play clock because Atlanta was out of timeouts. Instead, you throw it, you drop the ball, and that saved Atlanta 40 seconds. So that was a mistake. But in the end, the 40 seconds didn't even end up mattering because the Falcons they scored with 40 seconds left on the clock. They gave the Eagles 40 seconds, and then Jalen Hurts throwing that pick, that's inexcusable. Because I thought the Eagles could have a chance to drive into field goal range. When they got the ball with 40 seconds at their 30, it's like you got 40 seconds to go 30 yards. You can do that, right? No, apparently they can't. But yeah, I thought they could pull it off. So there was a lot of missed opportunities for Philadelphia to put that game away, I think. Ultimately, though, I disagree with the play call. But again, the worst thing is that Saquon dropped the pass. And if he catches that ball, the game's over. And we're talking about a 2-0 Eagles team. And we're talking about an 0-2 Falcons team. Talk a little bit more about Kirk, though. A lot of off-season banter. Should Michael Penix Jr. be the starter in Atlanta? Let's put a full stop on the Michael Penix Jr. stuff. Kirk's good. He's back. Only 2 touchdowns so far this year. He's gonna be fine. They play the Chiefs next week. I think they'll probably lose. And when they do, let's not overreact, right? Now, if they had lost to Philadelphia, then they go into that Chiefs game at 0-3. Assuming they lose to the Chiefs, they'd be 0-3. Then it's kind of panic time. Especially if the Saints, and we'll see if the Saints can beat Philadelphia next week. If the Saints beat Philadelphia next week, they are officially a good team. Right now, they're on good team watch. Like, I think they might be a good team, but I haven't decided yet. That's kind of where I'm at with the Saints. If they go out there and they beat Philadelphia, if they score 30 on Philadelphia, then they're a really good team, I think. But if they beat them close, good team. So we're on good team watch with Atlanta, with New Orleans. But if the Falcons had started 0-3, and if the Saints had even if they started 2-1, I think that would be cause for concern. And by the way, who do the Bucs play next week? That's probably worth watching as well. Next week, Tampa Bay plays the Broncos. So Tampa they're very likely going to be 3-0. If Tampa starts 3-0, and if the Saints start 2-1, the Falcons have to at least start 1-2. And they did that. They gave themselves a win. They're going to lose to the Chiefs. After that, the schedule gets better for Atlanta, and I think we'll start to see them win more games. Let's pull up their schedule really quick. After the Chiefs, they play the Saints at home. I think they win that game. Then a Thursday night against Tampa. I think they probably lose that one. Then after that, Carolina they should beat. Seattle I think they should beat. A rematch with Tampa, I think they get the rematch. And Dallas, who I think they'll beat. So I have them winning after losing to the Chiefs. I have them winning 5 of their next 6. Then they lose to Denver. Lose to the Saints, and then potentially a loss to, I don't know. I feel like they'll slip up. They might lose to Denver. They might lose to Dallas too, but I think the Falcons are going to be good. I have them at a 10 win right now. I still think they're the best team in that division. But they had to win that game. That was as close, because if you fall to 0-3, then things start to crumble. Then the Michael Penix talk gets louder. Then everything starts to fall apart. The players start to buy out. Raheem Morris is going to be getting questioned. Kirk's going to be getting questioned. They needed to win that game. They did. Congratulations to them. You can see the 2-point conversion right here after the touchdown pass. That one was broken up. And I thought when they missed that 2-point conversion, I thought that might have lost them the game. Turns out it did not. But either way, great win. Great. It was a thrilling finish. I love games like that. They're close. They're down to the wire. I really, truly didn't know who was going to win until the very last second. So that was a fun game to watch. Really fun game to talk about. So the Panthers have officially benched Bryce Young. Not the move that I would have made, But I can see why they're doing it. Look, he's been terrible. And essentially what this shows is that they have just completely given up. Bryce Young, last year, I was kind of high on the Panthers. I thought they could win 7 or 8 games. I thought they could be competitive in the division. I thought Bryce Young would improve. I liked his accuracy coming out of college. I liked his athleticism. I never liked his smaller frame, but if Kyler could succeed and Tua could succeed, I thought Bryce Young could also succeed. What do I know, right? What do I know? I was right about the Falcons. It appears that I am very wrong about Bryce Young and the Panthers. Now, I corrected myself early, to be fair. I corrected myself very early. I got off the Bryce Young train about 5 or 6 weeks into the season. But he just looks terrible. He looks like he's gotten worse. They're the only team in the league that hasn't scored a touchdown yet. Oh, no, they have. They did score 1 touchdown. They've scored 1 touchdown. They have scored, I believe, 16 total points, though. They're averaging 8 points a game. And Bryce is throwing more picks than he is touchdowns. He hasn't thrown a touchdown. He ran for a touchdown. But Bryce Young has just been awful. What can you do about it? So if I was Carolina, what I would do, and I understand why they're not doing this. If I was them, I would just eat the season because you're not a good team either way. Nobody thinks this roster's built to win. Adam Thielen at 34 is their best receiver. Jonathan Mingo. Who's their running back? Miles Sanders, Chuba Hubbard. Their skill guys aren't great. Their defense isn't all that good. They just allowed 44 to the Saints and 49 to the Saints, 26 to the Chargers with a not completely healthy Justin Herbert. It's a bad defense. It's a coach that nobody really trusts. Nobody's in on the Panthers, man. Nobody's in on the Panthers. But it is a new head coach, Dave Canales. And I think for Dave Canales' sake, the way he's thinking, because if I was in the front office, what I would be thinking is you let the season play out with Bryce. Maybe he comes alive. If he doesn't, at least we get a good draft pick. We can pick another new quarterback. Maybe Shador, maybe Quinn Ewers, or whoever ends up kind of being that top guy. And we try again. And it's 2 years down the drain, but at least we tried, right? At least we tried. And in a couple, it's not like they're out of it, right? In this division, Kirk's getting old. Derek Carr's getting old. Baker, not getting old, but his teammates are, right? His weapons, Mike Evans and Chris Godwin aren't going to be able to be elite receivers forever. And when they aren't, I suspect Baker might struggle a little bit more. And also, it's Baker. He's always been inconsistent. So, if you think about it from the position of where they are at in the division, yeah, this year's a lost year. And last year was a lost year. In 2 years, that division was going to be wide open again because it's going to be Penix. It's going to be probably somebody new on the Saints. It's going to be Baker with aging weapons and a defense that, again, it's an aging defense. And then it can be, it can be a Quinn Ewers or a Shador or a Jalen Milroe, or whoever it ends up being, Carson Beck. It could be any of those guys on the Panthers, and it could be a real competitive division again. In 2 years, that's all it takes. You throw a couple years down the drain, you say, well, at least we tried. You tank with Bryce, and you go out there and get the best quarterback this year's in the 2025 draft. That's what I'd do if I was ownership. Because it's not like they need... look, they're not winning the division with Andy Dalton, right? So they're pivoting to Andy Dalton, and Andy Dalton now, he started 10 years in Cincinnati, then he started a year in Dallas, then a year in Chicago as their backup, and then a year as the starter in New Orleans, and then this is it. Last year he was a backup in Carolina. So he started 12 years and been a backup for 2 years. In his 12 years as a starter, he's made the playoffs 5 times. He has not won a single playoff game, however. He has never won his division. He's been 5 times as a wild card he did. He won the division once with Cincinnati and made 4 wild cards, I believe. But his last good season was 2017, so it's been about 7 years since he's had a truly good season. He's a good backup, but nobody thinks Andy Dalton's going to take this team anywhere. It does make for a fun little division with, Dalton's now on his 5th team. Kirk's on his 3rd team. Baker on his 4th team. Derek Carr on his 2nd team. So you got 4 veterans at quarterback, all of whom are on at least their 2nd team. For 3 of them are on their 3rd plus. And they're all kind of trying to, revitalize their career, you could say. So it makes for, a fun little dynamic in the South. But out of those 4 quarterbacks, Dalton is clearly the worst. He's the oldest. He's the least talented. And he's had the worst career out of the bunch. I mean, you could argue maybe he's had a better career than Baker. I don't know if that's true. Maybe he has, maybe he hasn't. But Kirk's had a better career because he's actually won playoff games. I think he's won 2 of them. Maybe only the 1 actually. But Kirk, I mean, if you're valuing total career metrics, Pro Bowls, Kirk has more playoff wins. Derek Carr also more Pro Bowls, more playoff wins. So Andy Dalton's he's not the answer in Carolina. He's the worst quarterback on the worst team in that division, which again, like I just said, the division is good now. It's not a bad division. It's a good division, right? The NFC South can play football. This is not 2 years ago when they were all under 500 and Brady won the division with 8 wins. This is a real division. It's a real battle. And the Panthers are the worst team with 3 competent teams in their division. So I wouldn't move to Dalton. I think the reasoning behind it is they have pretty much there's two ways to look at it. Number 1 is they're going to try again with Bryce, but they need to give him some rest. That might be what it is, because sometimes young players need a breather. And it could be that Bryce is just so stressed and he's struggling and they just need to hit the reset button. So maybe that their plan is, look, we're going to sit him for a couple games. We're going to give Andy Dalton, if you look at their schedule, let's see who they have on their schedule. I'm curious. Carolina, on the schedule, they have Las Vegas, which is a winnable game. Then the Bengals, which will be tough. The Bears, which is winnable. Falcons, which will be tough. Commanders, winnable. Broncos, winnable. They actually have some winnable games, which is the sad thing. Like the Giants, that's a winnable game. There's a scenario where you should be able to beat the Raiders, beat the Bears, beat Washington, the Broncos, and the Giants. There's a scenario where they can win 5 games here. They could be 5-5. So I think maybe that they're looking at the schedule and saying, with Bryce, we might not win these games. With Andy, we might. With Andy, we could pick up 5 wins and be 5-5 at the bye. After that, they get the Chiefs, which is really tough. And so you don't want to throw Bryce back in there after the Chiefs game, right? How about then the Bucks will be tough, then the Eagles. So then their schedule gets really hard, right? Cardinals look good, Bucks, Falcons. So the end of their schedule is a gauntlet. This is the moment that they can pick up some wins. So I don't know. It's tough because, yeah, if you're trying to hit the reset button, I think what you'd want to do is you'd sit him against good teams, sit him against, some teams with great defenses. And maybe they're thinking, Max Crosby up next and then the Bengals with Trey Hendrickson. Let's sit him for the next 2 games and then let's bring him back. Because after the Bengals game, right, they get the Bears. The Bears is a tough defense too. So maybe they're even thinking bring him back to play this 4-game stretch here. Washington, Denver, Saints, Giants. That's theoretically the easiest 4 games in their schedule. So maybe the plan is sit him for 4 games, give him that mental reset, bring him back against a terrible Washington team, at least a terrible Washington defense. Their offense looks pretty good, actually. Their defense will be bad. So bring him back against Washington. Maybe we pick up a couple wins with Dalton and then kind of spark some life into this team. That might be what they're doing. The other thing they might be doing is it might just be Dave Canales looking at this thing and saying, look, I'm a first-year head coach, and I don't want to get fired after 1 year. And you would hope that that's not the case, because most teams, when you have a bad roster, a bad quarterback in a good division, and a first-year head coach, you don't have most teams like that aren't firing their coach if he has a losing record in year 1, right? You normally give your first-year head coach a little bit of a leash, right? Especially when the quarterback is bad And when the team is bad, the roster's bad, and the division's good, right? Like if Mike McDonald and the Seahawks come out and win 6 games, but they lose a bunch to the Niners and the Rams and Geno struggles, is that Mike McDonald's fault? I would say no, right? He should have a leash. And the same could be said about Dave Canales, right? The Panthers are terrible. That's not Dave Canales' fault. That's the GM's fault. It's the ownership's fault. It's a long train of a history of them making bad decisions. That is why they're a bad team. If they win 4 or 5 games this year, or let's say, that would be really bad if they win 2 or 3 games this year, I don't think Dave Canales should be fired. That being said, they fired Frank Reich after half a season, right? Half a season. So if I was the GM of the Falcons, again, if I was their front office, I would guarantee Dave Canales, I would say, look, Dave, we want you to play Bryce all season long. We want to see if maybe there's something there. And if there's not, then at least we can get another quarterback next year in the draft. If we suck enough, we can get the number 1 pick, which we might because we really stink. But we want to guarantee to you that we are going to give you another year next year. No matter what happens with Bryce, no matter how many wins you guys get, we understand it's a tough spot. It's a tough situation. And I would guarantee him a second year there. That's what I do. But their ownership's not great. So maybe they haven't done that. Maybe Dave Canales is sitting here really thinking to himself, gee, I might lose my job. I might get fired at week 10 if we don't start winning. So this might be a Dave Canales Hail Mary to win some games. And again, he may be looking at it and saying, look, Andy Dalton can beat the Raiders. Bryce Young can't. Andy Dalton might beat the Saints. Bryce Young can't. Andy Dalton can probably beat the Giants and the Commanders. Bryce Young probably can't. Andy Dalton could win maybe 5 of the next 7 games. Bryce Young maybe wins 2 of the next 7 games. That's the difference, right? That's what he's looking at. And then if they're 5-5 at the bye, which again, I don't think they will, but it's feasible now that they have Dalton, who at least is a grown-up at quarterback. He's not going to be terrible. He's going to be better than Bryce. I do think he's better than Bryce Young. I don't think he's better than any other quarterbacks in the division, but I think he's better than Bryce. If they're 5-5 at the bye, then, then maybe you think about trading for someone, or you think about, I wouldn't throw Bryce back in against the Chiefs, but, unfortunately, the way their schedule's set up is they're not going to be a playoff team. Even if they do win 5 of their next 8 games, that last 7 games is such a gauntlet. There's no way they're making the playoffs. Unless everything falls their way and, they just get, maybe the Chiefs, maybe Mahomes gets hurt, but that's not within, we're not going to think about that. So they're not going to make the playoffs either way. They're not going to be good either way. Either A, it's a reset for Bryce Young, or B, it's a cry of help for Dave Canales. Either way, it proves once again the Panthers are a terrible organization. Terrible. Tigers win again. They are closing the gap with Minnesota, now just a game and a half back. How about that? Could Detroit really do it? I've been talking Detroit up for the past couple of weeks because they've been hot. They've been playing really good baseball. They've been exciting, energetic. They've been beating good teams, right? The Royals, the Guardians, those are not jokes of a team, and the Tigers have been playing them very close. In fact, today, right now, they're tied 1-1, so they might win another one against the Royals and stay a game and a half back. But the Tigers, man, how about that? How about Detroit? They're staying alive, and I think they will. I officially am going to predict that they do catch the Twins and get the last wildcard spot. I think that they have the youth and energy to get the job done. They have the pitching to do it. The Twins are in free fall right now. So give me the Tigers to make the playoffs, man. Last night against the Royals, they win 7-6. It all comes, not all, but a lot of it comes from a 3-run 5th inning and then another 3-run 6th inning. Kansas City went up 4-0 with a 4-run 3rd. But the Tigers battled back. Parker Meadows, 2 for 5. Kerry Carpenter, 1 for 3. Matt Vierling, 3 for 5. He had a great game. 1 RBI, 1 run scored. Colt Keith with a home run, a 2-run homer. He goes 1 for 5. Spencer Torkelson, who's really starting to come alive, he's 2 for 5. Zach McKinstry with a triple, going 2 for 5 as well. It was a team win. It was a group effort, and they got the job done. And I'm in on the Tigers. I'm a Mariners fan, but I actually think the Tigers have the best chance at catching the Twins, not the Mariners, which pains me to say it, but I think it's true. So the Braves last night, they got beat badly at home. The Dodgers really hammered them 9-0. And for the Braves, it was a rough game. Only 4 hits, no runs. Sean Murphy with a double. Ramon Laureano with a triple. I feel bad for the Braves at this point. I've been saying all season, I've expected them to make the playoffs. I've always just kind of assumed they'd figure out a way to get there because it's Atlanta. I've always kind of just assumed that they're going to beat out the Mets for that last spot because it's Atlanta. Max Fried, for what it's worth, wasn't the reason. He allows 3 earned runs in 6 innings. He still looks good at 3.49 ERA, but the bullpen blew it. They allow 6 runs. Aaron Bummer allowing 3 earned runs in just a 2/3 of an inning. And they're now a game behind the Mets. By the way, the Mets had a great win last night. They walked off the Nationals, baby. How about it? How about the walk-off Mets? 2-1. Starling Marte is the hero. And I actually do like the Mets right now. This might be the first time all season that I'm saying this. I think the Mets will make the playoffs now over the Braves. I officially think that. So I'm changing my mind a lot. I got the Tigers now, and I got the Mets now. How about it? Let's talk some Brewers-Phillies. The Brewers ran all over Philadelphia last night. A bunch of stolen bases. Bryce Perkins stole 2. He's up to 22 on the season. William Contreras stole a base, and so did Bryce Terang, who's now at 44. 44 stolen bases for Bryce Terang. What a season he's had. Dude's a stud. Also, Joey Ortiz with a triple. And both Sal Frelick and William Contreras with a double. The Brewers are built very well. I like them a lot. They have power. They have speed. They play good defense. And they have good pitching. They don't have all the big names. But they have a lot of guys I like. Jackson Chourio having a good season. Blake Perkins at center field having a great season. William Contreras having... Okay, Perkins, to be fair, 665 OPS. Not great. William Contreras, though, 836 OPS at catcher. Willie Adames, 802 OPS at shortstop. It's a good team. I like them a lot. Rhys Hoskins has been pretty good. Joey Ortiz playing well at third base. And Bryce Terang doesn't hit, but when he gets on base, he's one of the fastest dudes in the league. So they're role players, and this is what they're good at. They understand, the Brewers understand, you can't have every guy in your lineup to be a great hitter. What you can do is the ones who aren't good hitters, we're going to supplement them with great defense and great fielding. Because Perkins out there, not the best hitter, but he plays excellent defense in center field, and he can run. Same thing with Bryce Terang. Same thing with Sal Frelick. All 3 of those guys, not great offensively. They will burn you in the field. They'll burn you on the base paths. And that's what the Brewers do so well. And then you look at that, and they do have some offensive stars, right? Contreras is real. Willie Adames is real. Jackson Chourio is real. That's a good 1-2-3 with Rhys Hoskins as your number 4 with some power, and Joey Ortiz at the back of your lineup doing Joey Ortiz things. So, yeah, it's a good team. Again, they don't have the star power, but they're now, after the win against Philadelphia, they're only 2 back. No, 3 back. They're now 3 back of the Phillies for the number 1 seed. If they can sweep them, they'll be 1 back. How are they doing today? Let's check. We'll talk about it tomorrow, but let's check right now. They are down in the 8th, down by 3, so we'll see if they can come back. But they're now just 2 games away from becoming the first team to clinch their division, which is cool. Look at the division leads. Houston by 4, New York by 3.5 now, Cleveland by 4.5, Philadelphia by 8, Brewers by 10. They lead the Cubs by 10 in that division. They are about to clinch. They'll be the first team to clinch their division. And we always kind of write off the Brewers. But I think they're good. I like them in the postseason. Again, I'm not sure if they're a World Series contender, but they do everything right, and they prove they build a team so well. Because they get the base running, they get the defense, they get the pitching right, they get the bullpen right. When you get all that right, you don't need 8 superstar hitters. If you can play great defense and run the bases well and have a competent bullpen and a good rotation, You don't need 8 superstars. All you need is about 4 or 5 guys who can really hit, and the rest is going to cover itself. A lot of teams are out here rolling out veterans who can't hit. Well, if you can't hit, what can you do? Can you play defense? Can you run? So many teams fall into the trap of, well, you know, he can't hit, he can't run, he can't play the field, but he's a veteran and we have to pay him, so he's on the team and he's going to play every day. It's what my Mariners do. Mitch Garver, you know, Mitch Haniger, bunch of guys on the Mariners. Jorge Polanco, bunch of guys in the Mariners. Can't hit, can't field, can't play defense, can't run the bases well. What are you there for, right? The Brewers get it so absolutely right. Look, if they had Christian Yelich and if he was still playing the way he was early in the season, I would say they're a World Series contender. I'm not there yet, but I love the way they build their team.